Welcome to Eagle Discovery, the channel where we dive deep into historical events, cultural conflicts, and the stories that shape our world today. For many people in Papua, December marks a significant moment in history. Presidents may change, but the issues in Papua remain unresolved. So how does President Prabowo Subianto address the situation? Prabowo's stand on Papua's struggles. Prabowo Subianto, the former Indonesian Minister of Defense and a key political figure in Indonesia, has long held a firm and unyielding position on the sovereignty of Indonesia, particularly with regard to its most eastern province, Papua. Throughout his political career, Prabowo has consistently argued that the biggest threats to Indonesia's stability lie in the growing separatist movements, which have seen varying degrees of activity in multiple regions of the country. Papua, in particular, has been a focal point of these concerns due to the long-standing conflict surrounding the Papua Merdeka, Free Papua movement. Despite being relatively small in scale, the movement for Papuan independence has persisted for decades and remains a significant issue for the Indonesian government. Prabowo, in his rhetoric, has highlighted the potential for foreign influence in the region, which he views as exacerbating the conflict. Foreign governments, international non-governmental organizations, NGOs, and various international bodies have, at times, shown support for the separatists, which further complicates the issue. This external intervention has raised alarms in Indonesia, with some fearing that foreign powers are using the Papua issue as a means to weaken and destabilize the country. Hey there, where are you from? I want to know which city you're watching our video from. Please leave a comment so we don't feel lonely. A small action like this will motivate us to make more videos. Thank you and much love to you. In his campaigns for political office, Prabowo has been vocal in vowing to prioritize Papua's sovereignty and national unity. He has made it clear that Indonesia will not tolerate any form of territorial disintegration. Prabowo has been particularly adamant about his opposition to the notion of Papuan independence, asserting that such a separation would not only harm Indonesia, but would serve as a victory for foreign powers attempting to destabilize the nation. He has argued that the success of the Papua Merdeka movement would embolden other separatist movements across the country, undermining the nation's territorial integrity and unity. Prabowo's stance is rooted in a broader context of nationalism and territorial integrity. He has expressed concern that the disintegration of Papua would set a dangerous precedent for other regions in Indonesia, which could potentially lead to more calls for independence from various provinces. In this light, Prabowo has positioned himself as a staunch defender of Indonesia's territorial unity, insisting that the country's sovereignty must remain intact at all costs. Under Prabowo's leadership and his tenure as defense minister, the Indonesian government has reaffirmed its commitment to maintaining control over Papua. This commitment has been reflected in a combination of military responses and strategic political efforts. The Indonesian government has deployed military forces to the region, often amid accusations of human rights abuses, but Prabowo insists that such measures are necessary to protect the country's unity and prevent the region from slipping into secessionist tendencies. Furthermore, diplomatic efforts have been undertaken to counter international support for Papua's separatists, including efforts to align the region's interests with national priorities and ensure that foreign influence does not sway domestic policy. Prabowo's approach to the Papua issue remains controversial both within Indonesia and internationally. Critics argue that the Indonesian government's heavy-handed approach has led to significant human rights violations in Papua and stifled the region's calls for self-determination. However, Prabowo maintains that his hardline stance is essential for the long-term stability and cohesion of Indonesia as a nation. All right. If you're new to this channel, Eagle Discovery warmly welcomes you. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the subscribe button and remember to turn on the notification bell to catch our upcoming content. The human cost of conflict. So, what exactly is happening in Papua? This region, which has long been a focal point of political and social unrest, is currently in the grip of a prolonged armed conflict. The ongoing struggle is between the Indonesian state forces and the West Papua National Liberation Army, commonly referred to by its Indonesian abbreviation, the KKB. The KKB is a separatist group advocating for the independence of Papua, citing historical, cultural, and economic grievances. Over the years, their attacks have grown increasingly violent and disruptive, targeting not just military personnel, but also civilians and critical infrastructure. The methods employed by the KKB include armed shootings, bombings, kidnappings, and deliberate sabotage of infrastructure such as roads, bridges, and power supplies. These actions are aimed at destabilizing the region, but they disproportionately affect the local population, plunging ordinary citizens into a constant state of fear and insecurity. The impact on civilians has been devastating. Families live in constant anxiety, caught in the crossfire between separatist forces and state military operations. Routine daily activities, such as commuting to work, sending children to school, and even buying essential supplies, are frequently disrupted. The risk of being caught in violent clashes or facing security checkpoints has turned normal life into a dangerous gamble. Tragically, many innocent lives have been lost, including those of women and children. For others, the conflict has meant displacement, with thousands being forced to leave their homes and seek refuge in makeshift camps, often lacking proper shelter, food, and medical care. The economic and social toll is equally severe. Papua's development has been significantly hindered by this ongoing conflict. The Indonesian government had been pursuing ambitious development projects in the region, aiming to improve infrastructure, expand access to education, enhance healthcare services, and stimulate economic opportunities. However, these efforts have largely stalled as resources are redirected toward security operations and emergency responses. This stagnation has deepened the region's socioeconomic disparities and left many communities in rural and remote areas without access to basic services. The lack of infrastructure in these areas has exacerbated an already dire situation. Roads remain unpaved, making travel and the delivery of goods and services difficult. Healthcare facilities are scarce and often under-resourced, leaving vulnerable populations without access to critical medical care. Schools are frequently closed due to safety concerns, depriving children of an education and dimming their future prospects. The broader implications of this conflict extend beyond Papua, impacting Indonesia's international reputation and raising questions about human rights and governance in the region. Critics argue that a resolution to the conflict requires not just military action, but also meaningful dialogue, addressing the underlying grievances of the Papuan people and ensuring their voices are heard in shaping the region's future. In the meantime, the human cost of this conflict continues to rise, with no clear end in sight. The people of Papua remain trapped in a cycle of violence, their lives overshadowed by uncertainty and despair, while the promise of peace and prosperity feels further out of reach with each passing day. Historical context and external influence. To understand why the conflict persists, it's necessary to consider the historical background of Papua's dissatisfaction with the central government. The roots of this unrest can be traced back to the integration of Papua into Indonesia after its annexation in the 1960s, following the end of Dutch colonial rule. The Papuan people have long felt marginalized by Jakarta, particularly regarding the region's limited autonomy, economic inequality, human rights violations, and lack of access to education and healthcare. Papuan grievances were exacerbated by the imposition of policies that many felt were unsympathetic to their needs and cultural identity. Over time, these issues led to the rise of separatist groups, the most prominent being the Free Papua Movement, OPM. Foreign powers, including neighboring countries like Papua New Guinea, have occasionally voiced support for Papuan independence, further complicating Indonesia's handling of the issue. Prabowo has been a staunch critic of external involvement in the Papua issue, viewing it as part of a broader international agenda aimed at destabilizing Indonesia. He has argued that foreign nations, especially those in the West, often take a selective approach to human rights issues, condemning Indonesia's actions in Papua while ignoring similar violations in other regions. In this sense, Prabowo's policy is one of self-reliance, insisting that Indonesia's sovereignty should not be compromised by foreign intervention. International pressure on Indonesia. Indonesia's handling of the Papua issue has attracted significant attention on the international stage. Countries like Australia, Austria, Germany, and Mexico have voiced strong concerns about human rights abuses in Papua, especially in relation to the treatment of indigenous populations and the Indonesian military's heavy-handed tactics. These countries have raised the issue at the United Nations General Assembly and have called for more significant international involvement in addressing the situation in Papua. Papua New Guinea, which shares a border with Papua, has also criticized Indonesia's actions. The tensions between the two countries have often been fueled by the shared cultural and ethnic ties between the indigenous Papuans of both countries. As a result, Papua New Guinea has aligned itself with calls for greater autonomy for Papua and condemned Indonesia's military operations in the region. In response, Indonesian diplomats, led by figures like Sylvan Austin Pasaribu, have pushed back against what they view as undue foreign interference. Indonesia has made it clear that it considers the issue of Papua to be a domestic matter and has accused countries like Vanuatu of overstepping their bounds by intervening in Indonesia's internal affairs. The Indonesian government has called for more understanding from the international community and has sought to protect its sovereignty against what it sees as an unjustified critique of its policies in Papua. Prabowo has criticized international criticisms of Indonesia's actions in Papua, especially when they come from nations that have themselves been involved in controversial foreign policies. He has pointed to the selective nature of international human rights activism, where the loudest voices are often silent when it comes to regions like Gaza, where innocent civilians also face violence. For Prabowo, these contradictions undermine the credibility of international calls for action on Papua. Stronger security and economic development. To address the ongoing conflict, the Indonesian government has bolstered security efforts in Papua, recognizing that the region's strategic importance demands a strong defense presence. Papua shares a 770-kilometer land border with Papua New Guinea, a region known for illicit activities such as smuggling, the movement of separatist fighters, and the trafficking of weapons and funds to the KKB. In response, Indonesia has reinforced its military presence along the border, establishing new posts in areas like Jayapura, Merauke, and Boven Digul. But security measures alone will not resolve the issue. The Indonesian government has also stepped up intelligence efforts to track the flow of financial resources and weaponry to the separatist forces. It's believed that funds for the KKB's operations come from various sources, including corrupt government officials, embezzled village funds, and illegal gold mining. In 2021, police unearthed evidence, including bank books and transfer receipts, that pointed to millions of dollars in financial support for the KKB. However, the Indonesian government has yet to uncover concrete evidence linking these funds to foreign sponsors. In addition to security, Prabowo's administration has focused on economic development as a key component of the strategy to stabilize Papua. Economic incentives, such as investments in infrastructure and social services, are seen as crucial for alleviating the underlying social and economic grievances that fuel unrest. However, these efforts are complicated by the ongoing conflict, which hampers progress in critical areas such as healthcare, education, and poverty alleviation. The future of Papua, a delicate balance. Looking toward the future, the Indonesian government, under the leadership of Prabowo, recognizes that true stability in Papua cannot be achieved through military means alone. It's clear that the situation requires a much more complex and thoughtful approach. The government understands that achieving long-term peace and unity will depend on striking a delicate balance between ensuring security and addressing the very real and legitimate needs of the Papuan people. This means focusing on improving their daily lives, which includes not just securing basic rights, but also providing access to better education, healthcare, and employment opportunities. For many Papuans, the lack of access to these essential services is a driving force behind discontent and a major factor in fueling separatist movements. When basic needs are not met, frustration builds and resentment grows. By addressing these challenges head-on, there is a hope that it could reduce the sense of alienation felt by many Papuans and create a more positive atmosphere in the region. One of the key proposals the government has put forward to help improve the situation is the revival of the transmigration program. This program, which would involve moving people from other parts of Indonesia to settle in Papua, is seen as a way to help develop the region. The transmigration program was put into place decades ago, but it remains highly controversial. Many critics argued that the program has had negative effects on the Papuan community. They believe it has exacerbated tensions by displacing indigenous Papuans, leading to issues with land rights and the erosion of traditional cultural identities. These concerns are deeply rooted, as many Papuans feel that their land is being taken from them, often without their consent. On the other hand, the government believes that transmigration could still offer a solution. They argue that bringing people from other parts of Indonesia could promote much-needed development in Papua, including the transfer of agricultural knowledge, technological advancements, and infrastructure improvements. There's also the belief that increasing the population in Papua could contribute to its economic growth and reduce the heavy reliance on external assistance. However, even with these potential benefits, there are significant concerns. Many worry that reintroducing transmigration could further increase tensions, particularly when it comes to land disputes. Papua's indigenous communities have deep cultural connections to their land, and any encroachment by outsiders could be seen as an attack on their way of life. Additionally, the potential influx of people from other regions could make the delicate balance between cultural identity and development even more difficult to maintain. In conclusion, while the Indonesian government's approach to Papua's future involves complex and challenging decisions, the key will be ensuring that the needs and voices of the Papuan people are at the forefront. There needs to be a careful negotiation between economic development, social justice, and respect for the region's indigenous heritage. Only by addressing both the immediate challenges and the long-term aspirations of the Papuan people can true stability be achieved. Looking to the future, a peaceful Papua. The long-term resolution of the conflict in Papua will depend on a comprehensive approach that addresses both security concerns and the socio-economic issues faced by the region. The government must prioritize creating policies that are sensitive to the unique cultural and social needs of the Papuan people. This means ensuring that the people of Papua have a voice in the decisions that affect their lives and ensuring that their rights and interests are respected. Efforts must also be made to foster peace through collaboration with international organizations, NGOs, and local communities. By working together, these entities can help address underlying injustices, promote sustainable economic development, and protect the environment. Moreover, international cooperation can also help reduce external interference, providing a more favorable environment for Indonesia to resolve the conflict internally. Security will remain a priority, but the ultimate goal must be a stable and peaceful Papua. This will require continued efforts to dismantle the networks that supply weapons and funding to separatist groups, as well as greater investment in education, healthcare, and infrastructure. With determination and cooperation from all stakeholders, a peaceful and prosperous Papua can become a reality. Through these combined efforts, Papua's future can be bright, one that is marked by peace, stability, and opportunity. With a unified vision and a commitment to addressing the complex challenges faced by the region, Indonesia can move towards a more inclusive and harmonious future for all its people. So we've covered the key aspects of the Papua issue and how the Indonesian government under President Prabowo Subianto's leadership is addressing these challenges. While the road ahead remains difficult, real change can only be achieved when factors like security, economic development, and social issues are balanced. Let's hope that in the future, Papua will find a path to peace and sustainable growth. Thank you for watching today's video, and don't forget to like and subscribe so you won't miss our upcoming videos.